Hey, do you remember Fortyler, the video series in which a guy named Connor made a channel in remembrance of his dead friend Tyler? But unexpectedly, he started to get tormented through the game Gmod, which is the game he often played with that dead friend. Well, this is part 2 to the first video I made on the series, and there are obviously updates. And I will admit, I may have been a bit harsh on Connor, the protagonist, for one, befriending a minor, and two, potentially accusing him of murder. But hey, don't blame me for being cautious. I always prepare for the bad first. And now that the next part is out, I've gotten more information, so, obviously my opinion has changed, and all I gotta say is, I'm sorry, Connor. Anyways, to give a bit of a refresher of what the plot is about and what my theory was at the time, Connor doesn't have the best family life, and his best friend Tyler got into a car accident which led to his death. But I believe there was foul play involved in which Connor developed some form of jealousy or resentment against his friend Tyler, who might have had a better life in comparison. So he caused the accident. Now, this doesn't mean that Connor hates Tyler. They're still best friends. However, something had to have led to Tyler's death, which is why my assumption is that Connor did it, either accidentally or on purpose. And the only reason why I say this is because, as I mentioned before, he's being tormented through Gmod. And the thing tormenting him is either Tyler's ghost, who's angry with him, or it's his guilt personified for ending Tyler's life. That's my theory that I was running with in the first video, but now that there's updates, my thoughts, again, as I mentioned before, obviously changed. So if you're interested to discover the truth, you can either watch the video series, in which the links are in the description, or you could stick around here and hear my conclusion. You're staying? Cool. Sit back, relax, open your favorite co-op game, maybe leave a like while you're at it too, and as always, my name is Ripa Estrella. Let's explore. So tired. So picking up where we left off in the series, in this video it opens with Connor playing Gmod, to which he found a suspicious looking building that he starts to investigate until suddenly he gets teleported away into a room in which we see a familiar player. Connor's first reaction after processing the site was to shoot, however all of his bullets were ineffective, so eventually he had to give up and contribute to the conversation the entity wanted to have. The entity calls Connor an oddity due to the fact that most mortals have some drive that keeps them going, a fire in their soul, yet Connor doesn't. Ever since the crash, he would be described as broken, only wanting to rot in his apartment, and the amount of time since he last spoken to his parents is extensive, but that's likely out of fear of having a mental breakdown. In response to this, Connor tells the entity to shut up, but of course it's not that easy. The entity continues to tease Connor, telling him to control his breathing or else he'll get a panic attack, which Connor did not like to hear. The entity also goes on to say that Connor can always just leave the game and just post about this online because he will quote-unquote definitely get support, unless his audience doesn't trust him, which is what the entity believes. The entity then tells Connor that he has many mistakes and that apologizing won't change the past, to which Connor starts to aggressively type back, claiming that he's trying to do better and that he hates messing up. Connor also tells the entity what he wants from him, and in response, the entity tells Connor to admit what really happened, and that they might stop. In response, Connor tells the entity to go F themselves, and this is where the video concludes. We also see a flash of letters, and in the playlist, it continues on to an unlisted video. However, we'll save the unlisted content for later. With that, my takeaway from this video is that maybe this entity is something more than what I initially thought. I considered that it could potentially be Tyler's ghost haunting Connor. However, with it using the word mortal, it makes it almost sound like it's something greater, something more than just a human ghost, likely a being that's trying to expose Connor's sins and make him acknowledge them. Spooky. Let's now proceed on to the next video. Explanation. The video opens with a simple "hey," indicating that it's Connor wanting to communicate with us, the viewer. Connor acknowledges that a lot of weird things have been happening as of late, which obviously makes us very confused. So he decided that it was best to finally give us an explanation. So he first admits that he was in the car the night Tyler died. He described it as happening so fast that it was hard to process at first, and as a result of the accident, his left leg was amputated and replaced with a prosthetic one. And anytime he looks at it, or every time he fails to look at anyone in the eyes, it just reminds him of what he lost. He misses Tyler. But that's not all. He then confesses to being the one who killed him, but specifically, he killed him due to his carelessness and being a coward. He also repeats the words, "it hurts," throughout the message until eventually it cuts away to a view of the entity inside a dark room with a spotlight over it. In this new scene, Connor tells the entity that he did it and to leave him alone, but the entity rejects that request. The reason for this is because when it made the offer, the entity said that it might leave Connor alone, emphasis on the word might. Connor of course calls the entity a liar and was mad, but the entity didn't care. The entity just told Connor to cry like a baby, and that no matter what he does, it will never bring Tyler back. The video then concludes with a repeating message saying, "Shut up." Sheesh. So, I guess I was kind of right about Connor being responsible for Tyler's death, but now we know more. Connor said that he was careless and also a coward, which means he was either not following fully the rules of the road, or he wasn't observant enough, and that's what led to the accident. And as for being a coward and it hurting, after the accident, of course acknowledging the fact that his leg took such damage, he didn't have the opportunity to check on Tyler's condition because he was focusing on himself. This resulted in Tyler not getting any medical attention, but we can't exactly blame Connor for this because after such a traumatic event, I wouldn't be surprised if Connor blacked out at some point or he just couldn't move because the pain was too intense. So yeah, sorry Connor for suspecting you of potentially being a bad and selfish guy. Connor is just a very broken and depressed dude with a rough life who's, truly mourning the death of his best friend after an accident he didn't mean to happen, but life can be cruel. Man, I really treated him like an envious killer for a moment. I'm willing to admit when I'm wrong. Sorry again. Anyways, let's now continue on to the next video. Recording 4. Similar to the past recordings that we've seen in my first video, we get shown wholesome moments between Connor and Tyler when they're playing Gmod together. But before we talk about their time together, let's first point out the obvious, the video's captions, which provide us with some pretty interesting information. So before we jump into the video, let's discuss that. It begins with the date March 24th, 2023, and the person speaking is a nurse. They're talking about a 17-year-old boy who got into a car accident that caused his left leg to be amputated, which is obviously Connor. Speaking of which, we get told about Connor's state, and the nurse explains how he never spoke, and he had a deadpan stare that almost appeared like he didn't have any life in his eyes. It was unnerving, and any attempts to speak with him was just met with awkward silence. As a result of these interactions, the nurse hopes that Connor can get the best therapist he can, because he definitely needs it, but according to the higher-ups, it seems like they're only going to consider giving him physical therapy. This is the conclusion to the captions, and it's making me feel more and more bad about considering the worst of him. He's just a traumatized dude. Speaking of feeling bad for him, let's see what shenanigans the friends got up to in the past so we can get a better insight on their relationship. So after massacring a horde of zombies, the two considered doing a talk show session for funsies, but they ended up messing around and playfully insulting and killing each other before eventually Connor asked Tyler if they wanted to hang out Wednesday night, since it was their spring break. Tyler was down, and they continued to mess around a bit until at some point Tyler said a swear word, which caught Connor off guard because he rarely swears due to his parents being strict on that, and Connor then laughs it off saying, "Hey, I learned all my swear words from my parents at a very young age," which was kind of depressing. Moving on, they started to make plans for the day they hang out with each other, and they also reminisce about a bowling alley that they went to for a friend's birthday, which Tyler ended up throwing up a lot that day because he ate an entire pizza in one sitting. Charming. Anyways, Connor tells Tyler that with his beaten up car, he'll pick him up on Wednesday, and Tyler then acknowledges that he needs to get his hands on his own car so he doesn't have to ask Connor to drive him around all the time. And it also doesn't help that Connor's car smells. Connor then replies, and this could just be a simple slip up, but first he writes, "But I do like you," before changing it to, "But I do like driving you around." Someone in the comments said doomed yaoi, which I never picked up on if I'm being honest. I thought it was just two dudes being bros, but the chance of romantic tension, I can see it, kind of, but that's just a headcanon or speculation from certain fans. Sometimes it really is just two friends that are very close. So back to the video, Connor then tries to continue messaging, but before he could finish his next message, suddenly he goes completely still, which made Tyler run up to his player model to figure out what happened. Then once Connor returned, he had to explain that his mother was yelling at him and that he needs to go to bed. Connor also reassures Tyler that he was fine, but Tyler knew that that wasn't the case. However, he doesn't want to push the topic any further. So the two understand that they have to go to bed soon, but first they confirm with each other that they'll go bowling on Wednesday, to which Connor asks Tyler if he even knows how to bowl, and Tyler admits that he might need to be taught how to bowl again with Connor's help. In response, Connor starts to tease Tyler by saying that he needs one of those kiddie ramps, which made Tyler respond by saying that Connor's projecting because he's 4'7", which made Connor mad, claiming that he's not 4'7", but 5'5", and Tyler only has the gall to talk this smack because he's 6 foot. New theory, Connor killed Tyler because he's jealous of his height. Okay, I'm joking. Anyways, we then switch to messages from Connor to the viewers, and he explains how that was the last saved recording in his hard drive, and the day they hung out with each other was the day it happened, the day of the accident. He then apologizes to Tyler, but knows that that won't change anything, and the entity won't leave him alone. That's where the video concludes. So yeah, more insight on the relationship and more details on the aftermath of the accident thanks to the captions. Tragic, honestly. And it's clear to see that Connor is being consumed by survival's guilt. So that explains his very, very sad attitude. So with that, let's now move on to the next videos. Unlisted videos. Now, before we check out the final few videos, I believe it's now time to discuss the unlisted ones. And beginning with this video, which the title translates to What Ignorant Fools, it's of Cyborg playing Team Fortress 2 with a friend. Remember the young friend Connor made in the first part of the series that I covered? The one who I initially thought was strange for Connor to be friends with, but now I don't care. That's Cyborg. Anyways, as I mentioned before, Cyborg is playing a game with a friend who goes by the username Crimson47, and the two are casually chatting amongst each other until unexpectedly the conversation landed on Connor. Cyborg started to air out Connor's dirty laundry about his dead friend and the car crash before clarifying that they weren't the one who pushed the topic. It just happened because Cyborg was curious and Connor couldn't just not answer. Additionally, it's not a common occurrence when they have these types of conversation, and Connor actually apologized for it later on, to which Cyborg admits that they don't mind lending their ear because they always are willing to listen to Connor, and it's good to get things off their chest. Cyborg also reassures Crimson that Connor doesn't seem like a bad dude, which I'm positive this moment is just the series telling us, the audience, that we don't have to worry about any ill intent, so I can chill now. Anyways, it continued to play the game and all that, but something to take note of is the description, in which it has some very interesting piece of text. It reads as so. You two have no idea what's going on, do you? For as nosy as you try to be, Cyborg, you have no clue the scope of what your friend's going through, you naive child. As for your friend, I don't think she has a clue either. All she can do is run her mouth about things she doesn't have a full context of regarding her friend. A foul-spoken sheep. Stay out of this. Connor is mine, and I won't be afraid to put you down like a dog if I have to. Man, that's so mean. Well, that's alarming and pretty possessive. Speaking of which, we get more interesting text hidden behind code in the next unlisted video, in which someone in the comment section solved, so thank you for that. The video's text reads as so, and buckle up, it's a long one. When I selected him out of all the others, I had no idea he would be this perseverant. Usually the prey I select do not last more than maybe 2 months, but Connor Klein seems to be persistent. He is pathetic, a broken soul stuck in the past watching old videos of prior bliss simply because he does not know anything else. He has others, but they cannot help him. I will not allow them to. He has made mistakes, one's understandable considering his state of mind, but mistakes regardless. And what better way to spin the narrative than to reveal those mistakes to the internet? The chat he had with that nosy little friend of his apology to said brat, and that little brat talking with his sheep of a friend, all done to raise suspicion. And it looks like Connor has noticed that and let it get to his head. You all have fallen right into my hands, haven't you? You are all nothing to me. That is all you will be. Isn't that right, buddy? Yes, you, the person decoding this text right now. Do you not know when to quit? You have to type this letter by letter, and yet you keep going. And to everyone lazy enough to not do it themselves and just waiting until it is posted in the comments, I see you too. Hilarious. You will not take Klein from me. He is my prey, and he has been my favorite one so far. Now you might be thinking to yourself right now, why are you telling us this? Well, I'm glad to answer. I don't need you all anymore. I've already won. Okay, lie, you got me. Anyways, this long-winded statement is obviously coming from the creepy entity tormenting Connor, and they are obsessed with keeping their toy, apparently. Also, how dare you call me out for being lazy? I don't have the energy to decode all the time. Anyways, another fun discovery from this unlisted video is the comment section, in which the audience can ask the entity questions and get responses, but because there's so many of them, I sadly can't go through them all, so feel free to check out for yourself. Links are in the description. Don't be lazy like me. But I will say this, when someone asks what the entity gets out of this, specifically if they get any benefits from tormenting Connor, their answer was that they get amusement. They aren't doing this for punishing a sin or because it's their greatest purpose. It's that they want to have fun, and that's really messed up. This entity just one day stumbled across Connor and decided to make them their next target, and because Connor is a fighter, this made the entity want to hook in their claws deeper, and now they refuse to let him go until they are satisfied. Tragic. Can Connor find a way to rid himself of his tormentor? Let's find out in the next few videos. Final confrontation. As the video starts, we get greeted by an image of the terrifying player model the entity uses, along with text demanding Klein to wake up to celebrate a special occasion. So Connor logs into the game, and the map was the same location from recording 4, however it's during the nighttime. Connor then enters one of the structures, and the entity tells him to step into the darkness, which of course made him hesitate, but what else can he do? So he went in and was taken to a different map, which showed another player. However, they didn't look corrupted or frightening. They looked suspiciously normal. This of course irritated Connor, and he asked if he was being messed with, and this moment is when he realized that his microphone was picking up his voice because everything he said was showing up in the chat. But honestly, that's the least strangest thing to happen to him, so ignoring that, he cautiously walks around until he eventually stumbles across a shotgun, which he was excited about. Then later on, he runs into the player model Tyler commonly uses. But it obviously wasn't Tyler, but the entity trying to fool Connor into believing that it was Tyler, but Connor isn't that dumb. So the entity soon disappointingly reveals themselves before getting to the point of their meeting. It's to celebrate the downfall of Connor's life and to play a little game. And it was kind of like a game of cat and mouse in which Connor had to desperately run away as the entity taunts and chase after him, while also throwing obstacles at him and constantly teleporting him around. Examples of these obstacles were zombies and headcrabs, but also complex layouts of each of the buildings that he was teleported into. He was also running pretty low on ammo during this, but luckily the next weapon he found was a crowbar, which was pretty useful. But anyways, at some point the entity appears in his path and asks him why he just doesn't give up. There's no winning against it, so he should just stop. Yet Connor replies stating that he'll go down kicking and screaming if needed, which made the entity want to test that statement. Connor was then teleported again, and as he continues on with his journey, he admits that he can't give up because something deep down won't let him. He doesn't know what, but it's keeping him going. And just when he was about to escape the building he was in, the entity appeared to teleport him once again. But when the screen turned black, unexpectedly we see text that reads, "Just hang in there a little bit longer." Interesting. Back to Connor, new map means new places to investigate until the entity appears again to chat, which their conversation was basically Connor giving the entity sass. Pretty funny, but that attitude soon caused another chase sequence. Luckily, Connor managed to get some distance, and as the screen turned black for a moment, we once again see text from an unknown source that reads, "Just a little longer, bud." Could this be Tyler? Well, before we can process that, Connor is taken to yet again a new location, but this one is more specific, or technically familiar. It was a scene of a car accident, and we can obviously guess it's reenacting the night Connor and Tyler got into their accident. Speaking of which, the entity wanted to further refresh the memory in Connor's mind, so we soon get shown the dialogue from before the accident in which the two friends just left the bowling alley while discussing how fun it was. In response to this memory, Connor started shooting at the entity, but it wasn't going to stop them, so they continued to show the rest of the memory until we hear the sounds of an impact. As a result, Connor started to cry out as the entity couldn't hold back their laughter. Connor then starts to think, who is he kidding? He's not nearly as strong to beat that monster, nor has he ever been. And when hope seems almost lost, in the corner we see text that reads, "Intercepted, baby." Then suddenly, Connor found himself in an odd location on a platform in which it was surrounded by water, and standing on that water is Tyler, the player model he uses specifically, and Connor of course didn't want to believe it at first because of what the entity attempted earlier, but Tyler reassures Connor that it wasn't a trick, and then he goes on to say that it wasn't his fault. However, Connor continues to blame himself for what happened because he was the driver, making him responsible for Tyler's death, but Tyler points out that it was a freak accident and stuff like that happens in the world. Despite this, Connor keeps saying he ruined everything and that the entity was right to consider him broken. Tyler then agrees that Connor may be broken, but that doesn't mean he can't be put back together. Tyler then tells Connor that the entity isn't tormenting him out of justice for what happened, but instead sadism, which is what we assumed from the Unlisted video, and this just confirms it. So yeah, this entity is a bit. Anyways, Tyler then tells Connor to let him go and to stop reliving the past, but Connor finds it difficult to forget as if he never knew Tyler, which Tyler isn't saying to forget their good history, but instead to look forward. He wants Connor's guilt to no longer control him, and then he reiterates that it was not his fault. And in this moment, Connor finally acknowledges that it wasn't his fault and that the crash was indeed an accident. The survivor's guilt, the pain, the anger, the suffering, not forgotten, but at least he won't let it control himself or consume him. Tyler then encourages Connor to scream that it wasn't his fault and to say it like he means it, which Connor soon does, and Tyler was happy for his friend. How sweet. Connor then asks Tyler what his next plans are after this, to which Tyler has a theory that the admin gun that was removed from Connor could be used to take out the entity, so that's what he's going to find for Connor. So with that plan set, excitement was in the air, but first, before going their separate ways, Connor tells Tyler that he misses him, to which Tyler feels the same way about him. With that, Tyler gives Connor a few more encouraging words before he soon steps into the darkness and comes face to face with the entity once more. The entity then questions where he went but chooses to ignore it because it's time to finish things. But with Tyler on Connor's side, Connor yells in frustration at the entity, giving him a piece of his mind which seemed to have genuinely catch the entity off guard and maybe caused them to panic a bit. The entity then tries to gain back control by bringing back the feeling of guilt and despair, but Tyler continued to encourage Connor, and Connor's inner rage boosted his motivation to find the admin gun that could be used to defeat the entity. We then get one more chase scene in which the entity frantically tries to bring Connor down, but it doesn't work, and Connor soon found the gun, which he promptly uses to shoot the entity. The video then corrupts for a moment before returning back to normal, and the entity is now on the floor bloody and likely dying. The entity then shares the regret for not killing Connor sooner, and they refuse to admit that they lost, but Connor doesn't care what they say because it's time to finish them. But first, Connor mentions the hundreds of people that the entity tormented and killed in the past, and hopes that they can settle the score once the entity is sent to their playing field. Ooh, hype honestly. Anyways, the entity was rightfully scared of that thought, but there's no stopping Connor now, so he soon shoots the evil being one last time, which triggers another glitch in the video before returning back to normal, and the entity is now gone. Feeling relieved, Connor turned around to see a dark portal waiting for him, which he soon stepped inside and was greeted by Tyler. He was proud of Connor, and Connor promises to not let his negative emotions control him any longer, and he'll move forward with his life. That made Tyler relieved, and the two shared a hug, which was sweet, until Tyler said that he can't stay any longer because he's kind of dead, which ruined the moment, but it was funny, and the two laughed it off. Anyways, the two then reluctantly went their separate ways after their tearful goodbye, and as Connor stepped outside of the building, the sky was bright and the birds were singing. It brought a smile to Connor's face, and in the final moments, we see a short animation of Connor visiting the friends that we've learned about in the Reddit posts, and he was welcomed inside. Not going to lie, I teared up a bit during this moment. Man, I was really wrong about Connor. I have to stop being a cynic. Anyways, we're not done yet because there's two more videos that we need to quickly cover before reaching the conclusion. And because they're pretty short, I'll just talk about them during this segment of the video. The two videos are titled Birthday Update and Credits, in which the birthday video, Connor explains how his life is going. He's hanging out with his friends, getting therapy, and after his birthday dinner, he went to Tyler's grave for the first time. He put a candle down and just chatted for a bit before heading home to play games with his online friends. He also soon explains to us his plans for the future. He wants to be a nurse, and he also doesn't plan on being on the internet much. Specifically, he'll stop posting videos and on his Reddit, but he won't delete anything, so all the videos will still stay up. With that, Connor promises to finally start living his life to the fullest, not just for himself, but for Tyler too. Sweet. As for the video titled Credits, you can obviously guess what that means. Giving credits to everyone that worked on the series, and giving credits to the stuff that was used, and sharing future plans for the channel. Pretty cool. Hey look, I was mentioned too. Wait, what? Also, I'm so mad at myself for taking so long to realize this, but the creator does at some point share the name of the entity, which they're called the Manipulator. Makes sense, but you know, I'm too far into the script now that I can't change it, so... conclusion time. Conclusion. First, it was a story of a guy paying tribute to his dead friend, which led to most of his audience feeling suspicious of his involvement, which only added fuel to the fire, which was his declining mental state. Well, Connor wasn't doing great before, but people commenting really didn't do him any favors, which the manipulator, the evil being tormenting him, used to their advantage. This also includes me. I'm sorry, bud, for again accusing you of murder. Anyways, Connor was luckily a fighter and fought against the manipulator, but his spirits were dwindling until eventually Tyler managed to break through and reignite the fire in his soul, and the two together defeated the evil being and sent them to a hell in which their victims can take their revenge. And after all of that shenanigans, Connor is now attempting to move on with his life, and things are now looking up. Happy ending, yay! With that, this was Fortyler, part 2, And if you couldn't guess, I obviously really liked this series, and what I enjoyed the most was the roller coaster of thoughts and emotions I had throughout the whole thing. I've gone from sympathizing with Connor to worrying that we're following the story of the murderer to sympathizing with him again and feeling apologetic. Apologetic, that word, I know how to say it. To eventually feeling excited that he was fighting against the evil being and won. It was hype. Will there be more to the series? Maybe, but honestly, it wrapped up pretty nicely that I don't see the need for more. Unless the entity somehow returns and just targets a new person, who knows? Maybe we'll see a new villain and a new game. So if you want to check out the channel yourself and see all the posts being made about the series, the behind the scenes stuff, the links are in the description. But first, since you made it this far in the video, I hope that means you enjoyed it. So please don't forget to like, subscribe to the funny little notification thing, maybe follow my other social medias, leave a comment, and I better not catch you dying on me. Goodbye!